we're live. Morning, everyone. My name is Sandy Levesque. This is the Think and Grow Rich Daily Hangout. I'm joined today by Rich Atkinson in Nepal and Glenn Walker in Tennessee. Hi, guys. And this is a Hangout where we read from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or his lecture notes actually at the moment, as a way to sort of get a daily dose of prosperity consciousness and unplug a little from the lack sort of mentality that's all around us. And so actually apologies because yesterday and Tuesday, if you went to see, watch the Hangout, or you were wondering what's going on, why is it not on anymore, I was supposed to move to Portugal, but I'm actually moving next week now. So in fact, I think I'm going next weekend, so I'll actually be able to do, it's not going to really disrupt the Hangout very much. I think just 2 days I'll have to miss again, Monday and Tuesday, but the next week or so is fine. So I was just looking actually where we were when we finished, and we're on basically what we're reading from Your Right to Be Rich, a series of lectures Napoleon did in the 40s and 50s, and we're on the fourth one, which is in the Facebook group. And if you're watching and you're new to the Facebook group and you'd like to actually come into the Hangout, you just have to follow the instructions I post in the morning. It's pretty simple. The first link just allows you to watch. The second one will actually bring you right into the Hangout, like Glenn and Rich are, and you're absolutely welcome to come in. It doesn't have to be a set, specific group of people. You're very welcome to, because I've had some questions from people who still can't seem to get in. I'm not sure how else to explain it. It's just literally click on that link. You might have to download the app, the Google Hangout, but it does it automatically if your computer doesn't already have it. It takes about 1 minute. So you're very welcome to come on. So I think we were around page 6 of the fourth book, the fourth PDF. Glenn, do you happen to remember if that was correct?
Let's see. Courtship. Let's see. The top of page 6 is without that you can't get very far in courtship, right?
Yeah.
Redirect. I think we're down a little. Oh, maybe 7. Sandy, I think
number 7. Yeah, a
Number
well-developed faculty of the imagination, controlled and directed. I don't think we've read that. Yeah.
I don't think we have either.
No. Okay. Cool. So does anybody
it's pretty
have?
Short anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Short. And we've read the end of it, but I think it'd be good to read it again. Would anybody like to read it? Read today?
Yeah. Is it easy for Richard to read, or if not, I'll read.
I don't know how I have the PDF. How do I get to it?
Oh, it's in the Facebook group in the file section.
No, I haven't. I mean, I can. I have it on my download. I have it on my downloads.
Oh, I see.
I'm not sure how I get it on the screen though.
Yeah, you have to go to the left-hand side.
Okay, let me get the download. So, okay, Napoleon Hill.
4 of 9 it is.
4 of 9.
Let's see, hold on a second.
And we're
Sorry, no.
Basically,
this is 4 of 9.
4 of 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for people watching.
Okay. And what page?
Page 7.
Now page 6, actually.
Page 6, sorry. Page 6.
Page 6, number 7, right?
Yeah, that's right. Halfway down.
Okay.
Hey, Sandy, so you got to celebrate.
I'm not quite set up yet. I need to get my, if you don't mind, if you want, I have to actually put my battery. I mean, plug in here. My battery's going down.
Oh, okay. There's also quite a lot of background noise at your side.
Yeah.
It might be better if
maybe better for
because I explained in the Facebook group how to screenshot. I'll bump it up, and maybe you can have a look. Perhaps test it as we do. Mute yourself, and then test it as we're reading, and because it'd be great to have you read, because we've never had you do it yet.
Okay. How do I mute myself on?
Well, you go to the top of the Hangout page, and you have to kind of hover over the top of it next to the Google sign, and there's some symbols. You need to click the second one, which is like a mute microphone with a line through it, and that will allow you
Okay.
to mute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Wait a
Otherwise,
minute.
I
I'm
can mute
sorry.
you, but then you won't be able to come back in.
That thing that's on the left there. Sorry about this.
Well, we're talking about two different things here, but we need to be aware that there are people watching. So if you just click on the top buttons, Richard, the second one, mute yourself, and then play around.
There, got
Just
it.
Google how to screen share. That's probably the easiest way rather than us explaining right now. Okay, you've got it. Cool. So Glenn, did you want to read instead while
Sure,
Rich is
I'll read
figuring it all out? Yeah, because otherwise we're just going to keep people waiting
I'll
a
just
bit
bring
too
it
long, I
up
think.
now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I'm going to screen share.
And for people who haven't watched the episodes in the run-up to this, basically we've been reading about different traits of success, and Napoleon's going through he's basically giving like an overview of his total philosophy, so like a short version. So it's actually really useful as like a review of what's in the main book in Think and Grow Rich. So you've got it now, Glenn, but you are muted, by the way, so we can't hear you.
Okay.
We will get there this morning, I promise, viewers.
Let's see.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, a well-developed faculty of the imagination, controlled and directed. Do you think those last words there are important? Audience members, yes. Napoleon, yes. An imagination not controlled and directed might be very dangerous. Napoleon once made an analysis of all men in the federal penitentiaries of the U.S. He did that for the Department of Justice. You'll be interested in knowing that the majority of the men in the penitentiary were there because they had too much imagination, but not controlled or directed in a constructive direction. Imagination is a marvelous thing, but if you don't have it under control and if you don't direct it to constructive ends, it may be very dangerous to you. The habit of forming definite and prompt decisions. Let's see. I've got to go to my page here. Do you form definite and prompt decisions when you have all of the facts in hand to make decisions? Audience members, yes. Napoleon, I think some of you are just a little bit too modest. Seriously, friends, if you do not have the habit of making decisions promptly and definitely, clear-cut decisions when all of the facts are in, you're loafing on the job. You're procrastinating and you're destroying this very vital thing called personal initiative. One of the finest places to start practicing personal initiative is to learn to make decisions firmly, definitely, and quickly once you have all of the facts available. Napoleon wasn't talking about snap judgments, opinions, or snap judgments based upon half-baked evidence. He was talking about facts, all the facts on a given subject, which are in your hands and available. You should then do something with those facts. You should make up your mind exactly what you're going to do and not dilly-dally around as so many people do. If you do that, first thing you know, you'll be in the habit of dilly-dallying around in connection with everything. In other words, you'll not be a person who acts upon his own personal initiative. The habit of basing opinions on facts instead of relying on guesswork. How many of you do that? How many of you can rely upon facts instead of guesswork? Well, you're a pretty truthful bunch, I think. I wonder if you recognize how many times you're acting on guesswork in comparison with the number of times you're acting upon facts and forming your opinions. Did you know that you have no right to an opinion about anything at any time, anywhere, unless it's based upon facts or what you believe to be facts? Did you know that? Why is that true? Because you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to fail. That's why, of course. You can go ahead and have opinions. We all do, a flock of them. You can even give them to somebody else without them asking for them, and we do that right along. Before you really and truly can safely express an opinion or have one, you must do a certain amount of research and base your opinion upon facts or what you believe to be facts. 10. Enthusiasm, the capacity to generate enthusiasm at will and under control. You know how to generate enthusiasm at will? Audience members, act, be sincere, conviction. Napoleon, fine. What's back of all this? What happens before you start doing anything in connection with enthusiasm? You have to feel it, don't you? You have to feel the emotion. Your mind has to be alerted with some definite objective, purpose, or motive. Then you do something about that motive. You do it with words, with the expression of your face, or by some other form of action. The word action is inseparable from the word enthusiasm. You can't separate the two. There are two kinds of enthusiasm. There's passive enthusiasm, which you feel but give no expression of it whatsoever. There are times when you need that kind because you don't have that kind. You'll disclose to other people what goes on in your mind at times when you don't want that to happen. You take a great leader, and while he may have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, he will display that enthusiasm only to whomever he pleases and under whatever circumstances he pleases. He will not just turn it on and go off and leave it. That's the way you and I do it. Or do we? That's the way the majority of people do when they have enthusiasm. They just turn it on, blubber over in it, and they accomplish nothing. Controlled enthusiasm. Enthusiasm turned on at the right time and then turned off at the right time is an important thing. And your initiative is the only thing that control that. If you took that subject alone, the question of how to turn on and off enthusiasm, cut the art down fine, you would become a marvelous salesman of anything you want to sell. Did you know that? You really could. Did you ever hear of anybody selling anything that didn't feel enthusiasm for what he's selling? Did you? Audience members. Napoleon, did you ever sell anything that you didn't have the feeling of enthusiasm over that you were trying to do, fellow? Audience members, no. Napoleon, you may have thought you did, but you didn't. If you didn't have that feeling of enthusiasm on your initiative, then you didn't make the sale. Somebody may have bought something from you because they needed it and had to have it, but you had very little to do with it unless you had the feeling that you imparted to him. How do you start the feeling of enthusiasm to another person? How do you do that when you're selling, for instance? Audience member, you must be sold on it yourself. Napoleon, you must be sold on it yourself. That's a very good way of putting it. In other words, it starts inside of your own emotional makeup. You must feel that way. If you open your mouth and speak, you must speak with enthusiasm. You must put enthusiasm into the expression on your face. Put on a smile, a good broad one. Nobody speaks with enthusiasm with a frown on his face. The two just don't go together, do they? Audience members, no. Napoleon, no, they don't. There are a lot of things that you must learn about this business of expressing enthusiasm if you're going to make the most of it. All of them involve your personal initiative. You've got to do it. Nobody can do it for you. Napoleon can't tell you how to be enthusiastic. Tell you the component parts of enthusiasm and how to express it. After all, the job of really expressing it is up to you. Tolerance. Do you know what tolerance is? Audience members, an open mind. Napoleon, an open mind on what? Audience members, all subjects. How many of you, no, Napoleon, how many are open-minded on everything? Come on. Napoleon laughs. Do you really think you are? I would hate to tell you how far off you are on that one because you're friends of mine. I want to keep you that way. Open-minded on all subjects, I'll admit that I'm not. I'm not open-minded on all subjects. I'm open-minded on a lot of ones that I want to be open-minded on. We shouldn't have any attitude towards any circumstances unless it's based upon something to justify that attitude or what we believe to justify it at least. Do you have any idea how much value you deprive yourself of all the ways through life just because you close your mind against somebody you don't like when the person most beneficial person in the world to you if you only had an open mind toward him? Did you know that one of the costliest things in an industrial or business organization is the closed minds of the people that work there? Did you know that? If you don't know that, I want you to find out. It's the most costly thing in any business organization or any industry is the closed minds of the people that work there. Closed towards one another, closed towards opportunities, closed toward the people they serve, and closed towards themselves. When you speak of intolerance, you often think of somebody like the other fellow because of his religion or politics. That doesn't scratch the surface of the real meaning of this subject of intolerance. It extends to almost every human relationship, and unless you form the habit of maintaining an open mind towards all subjects, towards all people at all times, you'll never be a great thinker. You'll never have a great magnetic personality, and you will soon be well liked unless you do have an open mind. Did you know that you can be very frank with whom you don't like and who you do not like? And who do not like you if they know that you're sincere and that you have an open mind. Did you know that? The one thing that people do not tolerate is to recognize that they're talking to somebody whose mind is already closed. And what they're saying has no effect whatsoever, regardless of whether there is to it or how much truth there is to it. There are a lot of people in this world whose mind is so definitely closed on so many things that you couldn't crack the mind with a sledgehammer, and you couldn't get an ounce of truth in there if you lived 100 years. They're just closed up tight, sealed. 13, the habit of doing more than you're paid for always. How many of you do that? Let me. Napoleon laughs. Napoleon, what's the matter with the ones who don't? The word, I just remember the word always. That word always. Napoleon laughs. All right. You followed the habit of rendering more service and better service than you're paid to render part of the time. Napoleon, that's more like it. That's something in connection with which you certainly have to move on your personal initiative. Nobody's going to tell you to do that, and nobody's going to expect you to do that. Something that is entirely within your own prerogative. Incidentally, it's probably one of the most important and one of the most profitable sources through which you can exercise your own personal initiative. You had to pick out the time, place, and under which you could make use of your personal initiative most beneficially, undoubtedly would be in your connection with your following the habit of more service and better service than you're paid to render. You don't have to ask anybody for the privilege of doing that, and also if you do follow that habit, not just do it once in a while, that's not so effective. Sooner or later, the law of increasing returns begins to pile up dividends for you. When dividends come back, they come back greatly multiplied. When you start living by this principle of going the extra mile, you can expect unusual things to happen to you, and they'll all be pleasant, every one of them. 14, tactfulness and a keen sense of diplomacy. How many of you have tactfulness and a keen sense of diplomacy? Napoleon, let me see your hands on that one. Audience member Napoleon laughed. That's pretty good. Maybe the definition is a little too broad. Napoleon, how many of you are tactful in your conversations with people? Napoleon, that's pretty good. What do you think of this business of being tactful? Is it worth the time it takes to be tactful? Audience members, yes. Napoleon, you think it is? Why? Audience members give various answers. Napoleon, that's right. You get the cooperation of others more easily if you're tactful. You come in and tell me I've got to do something, and I would say, well, now just a minute. Maybe I do have to do something, but if you put it to me that way, I'm going to set up some resistance right away. One of the most impressive things that Napoleon learned from Andrew Carnegie at the very beginning of his association with him was that he never commanded anybody to do anything. Never. No matter who the man was that he requested to do something, he never commanded. He always asked him if he would do a certain thing. Would you please do a certain thing, or will you do the other thing? And it's surprising the amount of loyalty Mr. Carnegie had from his men. They go out of their way for him any time of the day or night because of his tactfulness in dealing with them. When it is necessary for him to discipline one of them, he usually invited them out to the house, gave them a nice steak dinner, a real 5- or 6-course dinner. He really put on the dog, and after dinner, the showdown came, and they went over to the library. He would start asking questions. One of his chief secretaries was scheduled to become a member of his mastermind group, and this boy found out that he was scheduled for promotion. It went to his head and he commenced to run around with a bunch of high binders in Pittsburgh where people would throw cocktail parties and such. In a little while he was talking too much liquor, staying out late, his eyes were hanging out of his cheeks when he would come in the morning, and Mr. Carnegie let this go on for about 3 months. And he got out one evening to dinner. After dinner was over, they went to the library, and Mr. Carnegie said, "Now I'm sitting over there in your chair, you're sitting over here in my chair. I want to know what you would do if you were in my place. You had a man scheduled for an important promotion, and all of us seemed to have gone to his head, staying out late at night, drinking too much liquor, paying too much attention to everything except his job. What in the world would you do with a case of that kind? I'm anxious to know." The young man said, "Mr. Carnegie, I know you're going to fire me, so you might just as well start in and get it over with." Mr. Carnegie said, "Oh no, oh no. If I wanted to fire you, I would have given you a nice dinner. I wouldn't have given you a nice dinner, and I wouldn't have brought you up to my house. I could have done that down at the office. No, I'm not going to fire you. I'm just going to have you ask yourself a question and see whether or not you're in the position to fire yourself. Maybe you are. Maybe you're closer to it than you realize. That man, right about faced and did become one of Mr. Carnegie's mastermind alliances and did become a millionaire later on. It absolutely saved him from himself. Mr. Carnegie's tactfulness was out of this world. He knew how to handle men. He knew how to get them to examine themselves. It wouldn't do much good for Napoleon to examine you, but it might do good if you examine yourself in connection with your faults and in connection with your virtues. Self-analysis is one of the most important forms of personal initiative that you can have, that you can possibly engage in. Napoleon never let a day go by that he didn't examine himself to see where he was weak and where he could make improvements and what he could do to some better service. He examined himself every day, and that went on for a great number of years. Napoleon always found some place where he could improve, do something better or do something more. It's very healthy. It's a very healthy form of personal initiative, and it's very interesting too. You finally get down to where you'll be honest with yourself. You have any people there are who are dishonest with themselves. It's the worst form of dishonesty that Napoleon knew anything about. Creating alibis in your own mind to support your acts, your deeds, and your thoughts, instead of examining yourself where you're weak and then bridging those weaknesses or getting somebody in your mastermind alliance to bridge them for you. That's personal initiative too, and it's the kind of personal initiative that most people won't engage in because it involves self-analysis and self-criticism. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have an outsider criticizing out your faults, or would you rather criticize yourself and find them? Audience members, criticize yourself. Napoleon, why? Audience give various answers. Napoleon, well, you can be kind of confidential about it. You don't have to publicize these weaknesses that you find out. Corrected before anybody else finds out about them if you do a good job. If you have to wait until somebody else has to call them to your attention, then they become public property, don't they? They may embarrass you, they may hurt your pride, they may even cause you to build up an inferior complex if you wait for the other fellow to point out your weaknesses to you. That's personal initiative too, finding out what your weak spots are, what it is that causes you to be disliked by other people, why it is you're not getting ahead as well as some of the other people, and why you know you've got just as much brains or even more than they have. Another marvelous way to take personal initiative is to compare yourself with other people who are succeeding beyond your success. Make comparative analyses and see what it is they have that you don't have. You'll be surprised to find out how much you can learn from the other fellow. Maybe the fellow you don't like very well either. You can learn something from him. If he's doing better than you are, you can always learn from him. You can learn from the other fellow who is not doing as well as you're doing too. It works both ways. You may find out why he's not doing as well.
Thank you, Glenn. We can probably stop there for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for reading. So we've been covering there. Oh, and by the way, I have a random anecdote about Andrew Carnegie. I did a hangout about him recently, and I discovered that the way to pronounce his name is actually Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah.
Americans tend to say Carnegie, and that's what I used to say. But in Scotland, they say Carnegie, or like A instead
kind
of I. Yeah, exactly. So Rich, you can actually unmute yourself if you want, if you don't have any background noise. So basically, here we're reading about tactfulness, enthusiasm, tolerance as well.
Yeah, there you are, Richard. Oh.
Yeah, doing more than you're always paid to do. Oh, no, hang on. Doing more than you're paid for always. And
self-analysis.
Self-analysis as well, like having the kind of the blinders off so that you can actually see, how you function. So did anything? Do you want to share anything about any of those points, either of you?
Yeah, I think self-analysis it's tough. It is hard to do that, right? Because you really have to get down to your honesty in yourself, right? And know where your weaknesses are, and and then take the initiative to work on it, right? You know, I mean, I think that's a very powerful thing to be talking.
Yeah, and there's actually questions in the novel, not in the novel, it's not, it's a book, where he goes through, there's like 2 pages of questions you can use. I think it's in one of the final chapters. So if people want to sort of get more information, you can go to that part of the book and have a look at them. But yeah, and I love also the part about doing more than you're paid to do always, because it actually reminds me of something I heard recently. When you give value, yeah. Oh, that was it. I heard this expression recently that I thought was really catchy, and it sums it up. It's when you're in service, you're never nervous. And the
Oh,
guy
I like
who shared it was a young British guy, doing very well on the internet, and he was saying that
Yeah.
he's always, giving trainings um, and not, asking people to do anything afterwards, or he just gives a lot of value out to people, and he doesn't just do that. You have to do other things too. There's a plane going over. But he said that his basic philosophy was when you're in service, you're never nervous. And I think that ties in nicely with what Napoleon's saying here, that if you always...
Yeah, I like that. I like that, because if let's say you do a volunteer work or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. That's true. You aren't nervous then, right? It's because you're stepping outside of yourself. You're going beyond, right? You're going it beyond.
Exactly. And sometimes people feel like they don't deserve to be paid, or they feel nervous about asking for money or asking for the sale, because they don't possibly realize, or they don't feel like they're really doing enough to deserve it, which can be quite subjective. I mean, sometimes people just don't see the value of what they do. But I think if you're doing things where you start to feel it, when you're giving out more than you have to, when you go a bit beyond the what would be acceptable, you just push a bit more.
Yeah.
You feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. We have music in your coming from you. It's quite funny.
Is it too much? Is it too much? Should I mute?
No, it's okay. It's quite
okay.
Relaxing.
Andy, it was nice.
Yeah,
It was nice.
It's funny. Some microphones pick up stuff more than others, and this just picks up a fair amount. So I just got the new headset. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not too bad though. Yeah. This is a very good section here that you're talking about. It's very powerful. I really like that whole way that Carnegie handled that young man. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not, I should read more about him because I've heard kind of the controversial parts in terms of the mining strike, but I think that had more to do with his lieutenant. There was some problems with a mining strike that took place under him. But I think that some of the problems got created more with his lieutenant rather than with him. So, but anyway, he certainly, as you know, contributed to a huge way, at least in the United States, with all the Carnegie libraries.
Yeah. His library program. Yeah, exactly. I saw one recently. It also reminds me a little bit. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, I'm saying that they're beautiful buildings. I've seen quite a few of them.
Yeah. And it also, like what you just said about the strike, which it reminds me of. And I've talked about this book before. It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. It's a book. It was a bestseller, all about habits, and it gave the example of a huge steel company, not one that Andrew Carnegie started, I think, another one, and it was really big, made a lot of money, but then as the end of like a century later, it was starting to flag a bit, and they were losing money, wasn't doing so well, and nothing they were doing was working. And they brought in a new CEO, and he did a speech at his shareholders meeting which scared everyone in the room, because he said at that meeting, normally people would talk about, we're going to become more profitable, we're going to do this, we're going to do new products or whatever. And he spoke about safety. And he announced that the main thing he was going to focus on was making the company safer, so that there were less accidents. And he gave all these statistics about how many accidents they were having, and people that had been injured, or even really seriously injured. And people were shocked. They thought he was this communist that had come in to protect the workers and not care about the company. And in fact, some of in the book, he has an interview with a stocks advisor who was in that meeting, and he got out and phoned all of his clients and told them to sell their stocks in this company. But the amazing thing was that this guy wasn't like a communist. He wasn't. He had decided to pick one habit in the organization and to change the organization's patterns with it, to change everything else. And he decided that if they focused on safety, they would have to become more efficient. They would have to have better supervision of things. They would have to be more accountable, and that it would filter through the whole organization. And that's exactly what happened. And it just reminds me of this thing of going above and beyond what you have to do, because a lot of companies in the same industry would sort of just make sure that things were okay, were safe. But they started implementing many rules to make sure that workers were definitely safe, and that there was no question that they could be harmed. And it got to the point where he shares an interview with a supervisor who said that he was on his lunch break one day just staring out the window, and he saw other guys from another steel company working on their bit, and that they didn't have a harness or something, even though they were really high up. And normally, before all this happened, he would have just turned a blind eye, because many people used to do that. They couldn't bother to go and get all the equipment. But he was so kind of, he'd formed such a strong habit from the result of the CEO's strategy, that he went out there and he said to the two guys, even though they weren't his workers, do you realize you're putting your lives at stake and it's not worth it? You need to make sure you're safe. Go and get your harnesses. I'll stay here while you do that. And the organization became extremely profitable, and it just turned everything around. So it's just a little real life example of how what Napoleon's talking about in theory actually works in real life. So I just wanted to share that. And the book is really good as well, by the way.
Cool. There's another great one with Henry Ford, where he actually doubled the wages of his employees.
Yeah.
And all the other car manufacturers were just aghast, because but he got so much more work out of his workers, and they were much better, and only the best work for him. But it was absolutely worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a great example as well.
Yeah, and a modern day example is Costco versus Walmart. That Costco pays a decent wage. They actually pay something like $40,000 a year and give benefits and allow the workers to unionize, whereas Walmart is just a dirt cheap, lowest wages possible. And Costco's the value of their profits are going up, whereas the profits of Walmart are going down.
Oh,
so
wow.
It really
that's
shows.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah, and people often say that when they go in. Sorry, Glenn. Go on.
On the Henry Ford thing, Richard, the other side of that was, of course, if you're going to double people's work, buy more cars, right? Too, and that was kind of his end game in that, and it was brilliant actually, and it was forward thinking. It was really
He was a visionary. Yeah.
Right. Visionary, absolutely. And a good lesson for the corporations nowadays that are trying to squeeze every last drop out of their workers and not give them raises. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So just as a recap.
But there are some. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think we're getting bad feedback. So just as a recap before we finish today, we read about being enthusiastic and realizing if you're not enthusiastic about things, and just having a look at why that is, selling yourself on something before you sell it to other people, and then having an open mind So that I think what he's talking about with that as well is that when you don't have judgments of people, people feel good about you because around you because they don't feel like you're comparing them negatively to you or you're judging them in some way. So having an open mind makes you more magnetic, is what he was also saying. And then the habit of always doing more than you're paid for, always, you know, in any kind of example, and being tactful. So he gave the example of Andrew Carnegie with his worker not telling him outright, you know, I'm going to fire you because you've been slacking off and coming in drunk, but would you fire yourself? And making the guy kind of realize for himself that he was, you know, sabotaging his job and his career. So I think that was really clever of him. It was like instead of just telling him, which probably would have made the guy get pissed off and separate away from him, he said to him, how do you think you're doing? And you know, when you have that moment of self-awareness, no one can take that away from you. You've had that. So so some really brilliant points in today's reading. And just realize that everyone watching, because I know a lot of people watch this after actually, just be really aware that the more you read this book, the more you start to realize that this can apply to all of us. It's not just some, you know, hotshot businessman or Henry Ford or Thomas Edison. This can actually, we can become these teachings and live this and see it in our own lives. And one of the reasons I set up this group was because I saw with my own eyes someone who's done that. He became a student of this book 9 years ago when he was living in a trailer, you know, with 3 kids and a wife, and today has his own home, is on his way to being a millionaire, has totally transformed his life, and this book is the major thing that he credits to that. So just realize that there's, you know, you're on a path to something else if you're watching this Hangout and tuning in on a regular basis. So on that note, unless you guys want to add anything else, thank you, Glenn, for reading.
Oh, you're welcome, Sandy. I just wanted to say it was nice that you got to spend Bastille Day in France, right?
Oh yeah, right. It was. Yeah, I was planning to be traveling that day, so I ended up being able to go and watch. I should post the video actually. I made a video of the fireworks, or my friend did. Yeah. So that was, yeah, it's interesting, the whole revolution, and it's a big celebration here. But they focused more on World War I for some reason than, you know, the actual French Revolution.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, they pick a more recent war. I think they feel like people don't have any concentration span for stuff that was longer than 50 years ago or 100 years ago, which I don't think is true. It's a bit of a shame, really, but there you go. Oh. Well, thanks, guys, and I'll be here tomorrow morning. So see you tomorrow if you're here, and to everyone watching, you're very welcome to come and join us as well.
Okay.
All right,
Okay,
thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Vive la révolution.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.